The CGA Tour, a podcast unlike any other. Now your host, Glen Alexander.
Hello and welcome back here to the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast, the Glen Alexander Tour. Tonight I'm joined by a fellow member here of the College Huddle Network and the Texas Tech College Huddle Network liaison, affiliate, whatever we want to say here, whatever the right terminology is. But Spencer from the 23 Personnel podcast. Spencer, thanks so much for joining me here tonight.
Appreciate it. Always a pleasure to be on the show.
Yeah, well, our two seasons have gone, I would say, in dramatically different ways than maybe expectations here. I forget exactly what Texas Tech expects to do this season, to be honest. But I know you guys just had Big 12 noon kickoff here on campus for the last home game. And, heading to this one here, you got the bye week beforehand too, so a little bit of time off in between after playing Colorado. And I know we're going to face them after we play you guys. So curious, what were your takeaways here from that Colorado Texas Tech game, and how do you think it'll play against us here, Oklahoma State, as we bring you guys to Stillwater?
Yeah, well, Texas Tech was picked 9th, and I mean, I guess we're a little bit ahead of schedule in terms of preseason predictions. The problem with the way that our fan base is, the way that I am, is that the expectations swing wildly week to week based on how that game goes. The last game, when we opened up the season and went to overtime with a regional FCS team, we were like, this one's going to be rough, and kind of confirmed that when we went up to Pullman and lost to Washington State in the fashion we did. Came back to face North Texas and just it snowballed on North Texas so very quickly in that second quarter. We went to that game, and I had my two youngest children with us, and it was super hot that day. So we lasted all of the first quarter before we got up and left. And I think it was 17-7 when we got up. We get to the car, we drive back home, and it's 52-7 at the half. Well, there we go. So expectation after that was we're back, baby. We're dropping 50 burgers and we're gonna run this thing. And then we eked out a couple of close games against Cincinnati and Arizona State. Both I think we thought we were pretty good in winning those. Somewhat lucky in the fact that both of those games required a late defensive stand or a missed kick there for Texas Tech to hold on. I think both of those teams are overperforming preseason projections. So those two wins are looking pretty good for Texas Tech. And then we hit our first bye week. We came back and we're okay, we got 4 games now. We got Baylor, TCU, Colorado, and Iowa State. We got a great shot here. We're what were we? 4-1, whatever. No, we were 5-1 at the break. Feeling pretty good. And then we got absolutely torn apart by Baylor and didn't see it coming. We allowed something like nearly 60 points. Nothing was working. And we're just man, is there just some kind of Baylor curse with McGuire facing his former school and Aranda and all this kind of stuff? Is Baylor better than we thought? And then we go into Fort Worth, and we had a 17-point lead there late in the third quarter. Ended up losing that one by 1, which was unbelievably frustrating. Then we're okay, now we're going on the road to a top 10 Iowa State team. We've played well the past couple of seasons against Iowa State, but they weren't top 10. 7-0. Very similar fashion how a lot of these games for Texas Tech you got out to an early lead and then just kind of held on for dear life. There was a late offensive score there for Texas Tech to retake the lead and ultimately win that game. Which brings us to Colorado. We're feeling pretty good. We have a very narrow shot at making the conference title game, and that was something that was referenced, not really spoken too much about. Like, let's see if we can take care of business before we start looking too far ahead. Obviously, Colorado had been performing a bit above preseason expectations. When we were coming into the season, we're like, we're not sure what Colorado team we're going to face this late in the season. Are they still going to be bought in? Are they going to have enough losses racked up that they're going to be checked out? Are they going to be healthy? That wasn't the case, man. We did jump out to an early lead, which we've done several games. And it's like, whether it's the game plan script from the offensive coordinator, it runs out, or the opposing defensive coordinator figures out some tendencies, and it's like, actually, it's a fairly simple Texas Tech offense to defend. Quarterback's not super accurate, not a superb athlete in the pocket. Run schemes are very straightforward. Granted, Taj Brooks is a dude, but Colorado was able to sit back. They switched up from their very aggressive man defense into more of a zone and kept everything in front of us and in front of them. Their offense picked up steam, as you would expect Sanders and the guys around him to do. For those that didn't watch the game and got super chippy there, like the officiating allowed the teams to play very aggressive and I guess loose. There were times when like it felt like the game was getting out of hand. Like the officials didn't have a handle on it. Missed calls for both teams. It wasn't like it was one-sided or anything. But it was very much a part of the game. I mean, when you let the opponent outscore you 41-14 in the final three quarters, it's not the officials. It wasn't your offensive coordinator. It was a combination of all bad things happening. So we've rotated around like who to blame after each loss. Offensive coordinator Zach Kitley is the favorite target because I think there's just expectations of offensive expertise and explosion and all that kind of stuff in Lubbock and for Texas Tech, and it's been a little bit more reserved. We knew coming into the season they were trying to get Taj Brooks this school rushing record, which he did eclipse this past weekend against Colorado. So we knew it was going to be run heavy. I mean, it makes sense. Like he was, the known commodity on the offensive side. We all had expectations about Baron Morton at quarterback, especially when he went on the road in Stillwater a couple of years ago for his first collegiate start, came firing out of the gates. We're like, this guy's he's got it. Then since then, like he's dealt with injuries. We haven't really seen that quarterback since. We've brought in a few guys along the outside, transfer receivers, and Josh Kelly and Caleb Douglas. Those are both 1-2 in our receiving yards and catches and touchdowns. New guys to the roster, very much needed additions with the way that our receiving core was just abysmal last year. But if it hasn't been like an offensive down week, then it was defense giving up 59 points to Baylor, or not being able to account for TCU just playing Savion wherever they wanted to put him. So, I mean, it's been a little bit of everything. I think a lot of Texas Tech fans would tell you 6 and 7 wins this season was about what we were thinking. When we got to 5-1, we were like, let's go win the whole thing. That wasn't this team. Like there were obvious flaws in this from game one. But I think realistic fans saw this middle section of our season between our 2 bye weeks. We had 4 games here with a really good shot to go 3-1 or 2-2. And you went 1-3, and that's kind of reset expectations, and it just left a sour taste in everybody's mouth with the bye week here. With 2 games left, Texas Tech has not been a great road team. I know we're looking at Oklahoma State and thinking like, okay, there may be an opportunity here to get right and to continue to improve on that road record, but you can't take anything for granted with this Texas Tech team. Like they lose games they should win, they win games they shouldn't. It's almost always ugly. That doesn't really help anything. We win games and sit back and kind of complain about it. Like, I don't know. It's been a weird season. Have a decent shot at going 8-4, which would be the best Texas Tech season, unfortunately, since like 2009. Like Mike Leach's last year here, which is sad in and of itself. That like that's what's on the horizon, and people are like, but really, is that enough? And I know like hitting 8-4 and talking to Oklahoma State fans, like y'all have been like churning out 9-10 win seasons like it's nothing, and we're just like, man, like what the heck are they doing up there? Like, I want some of that, and now we're like we're looking at 8 wins. We're like, we should have done more. I don't know if you really should have done more with this team. But anyways, I that's a long roundabout way to tell you, like, it's been up and down, man. It's been streaky. It's been irritating. It's been frustrating. I don't have to tell you, like, college athletes and getting too invested in this stuff, like it's not good for your health. But here we are because we can't turn it off. We can't look away. So.
Yeah, I was going to say when you guys were 5-0, I think earlier on this year, I mean, in conference play, I mean, you had won, I believe it was 3 in a row, was doing the Big 12 huddle here. And yeah, you guys had beaten Arizona State, who had looked a little decent. They had beaten an SEC team previously non-conference. And then you beat Cincinnati, go beat Arizona when everyone still thinks Arizona's going to be pretty darn decent and pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then just that Baylor game, it's like, whoa, okay, let's take a step back. Then the TCU game, all right, well, it was really close, but it's an away game, okay. And then you're telling me you're going to go to Iowa State and beat them, and they were unbeaten before you played them, and now they've lost 2 in a row, Iowa State has. So it's kind of like a mixed bag, I think, in the Big 12. It's like week to week, how do you judge yourself? How are you doing? And the one thing is an Oklahoma State fan I've always been going back to is like, well, our defense is just absolutely horrible. I mean, our defensive side of the ball, I know you guys can run the ball, at least a little bit. And I know defensively, we are just absolutely it seems like letting everyone through. I mean, we are 15th and 16th in the conference, respectively. Oklahoma State 16th in yards per game allowed. But you guys are averaging 50 less yards a game on average versus us. And you're allowing 1,000 yards less on running the ball. I'm rounding a couple of points here and there, a couple of yards here and there. And you're allowing 500 more yards ish. That's the difference here. Passing it, but we're not doing anything to stop the run. And respectively, we're over here on the offensive side, 13th in the conference, and yards per game at 383, and you guys are up here at second, 441 a game. So I would personally guess that you guys will probably come in and beat us. It probably will be a little bit too close to call, though, because that's just kind of the way that Gundy plays games, and it also seems like the way you guys are playing games. Why would I think anything differently? But we've got to score more than 38 to beat you. That's the thing. Every game we've won this season, we scored 39 or more, and we've only won 3 games. They're all non-conference. So we'll see if we can somehow stave it off, because I don't think we're going to play Colorado well in Boulder Friday at 11 a.m., on Thanksgiving week. And we've got a bye week going into the game against you guys. It's senior day. We've got such a senior-led team as well. 20 out of 22 starters returning this year. Several guys have been injured on the defensive side of it, but I'm curious here. Did you, coming into the season, did you think, hey, you know what, if we beat Oklahoma State and, Iowa State, it's a win? Or was there kind of a certain, like, hey, if we get to 8 wins on the season, it sounds like, hey, that's a victory within itself? Or have expectations during the season just changed so much that it's kind of not the greatest right now?
I think when we were looking at the schedule preseason, it wasn't like we were picking out, like, we have to beat this team, we have to beat them. Obviously, like, Baylor, TCU, and Oklahoma State are more emotional games with the proximity and just like I would say competitiveness, but we haven't really been that competitive against the Cowboys. Let's be honest. Um, Outside of that, it's been like we just kind of we felt we as a fan base kind of felt that 6.5 wins was a little low for the preseason projections, as I think most teams would when they come in like that's too low. We're gonna be better than that. Um, and we're there now. And looking at it like we don't play well on the road. We've this season alone we've had multiple games where we've played former players, former coaches, where they've just absolutely lit us up. Like the starting quarterback for Abilene Christian, game one, what was it, a transfer from Texas Tech? And obviously, like, if you're familiar enough with the region, Abilene's like 2 hours away. It's a smaller school, but they pick up a lot of D1 transfers from the Metroplex, from Tech. So there were a lot of former Red Raiders on that team. Our former defensive coordinator under Matt Wells is their head coach. So it's like there were a lot of Texas Tech ties there. And when they went off, it was like, well, it was like their Super Bowl, right? But then we saw that with North Texas as well. Their head coach Eric Morris was on the staff with Cliff Kingsbury, was a receiver under Mike Leach, all that kind of stuff. So I think looking at the schedule, we felt like, okay, 7-8 wins would be nice. If you did 7 wins, that would be 3 winning seasons in a row. Again, we're still trying to rebuild and kind of put pieces back together after just the last few coaching misfires on who was picked to lead the program. And I think we've all felt a pretty solid progression and trend with McGuire going in the right direction. So getting, a 3rd winning season in a row was, I think, more what we were aiming for than, we got to pick off certain teams. We got to win certain rivalries because, like, you look at our schedule, really, there's not one team circled and like, that's who we have to beat. I don't know if you can say Texas Tech has a well-defined rivalry within the Big 12 now. Like we would point to Baylor and TCU, but they kind of like self-selected themselves as big rivals. We would like to be competitive and compete with you guys. But I don't think that's felt the same way. Like probably the same way like Houston would probably want to be like rivals with us, but like we haven't been in the conference long enough, and we've it's one of those things like Texas Tech doesn't really have a great rivalry within the conference, so it's not like we had picked out this is the game we have to win. It's a big circle, like it was in years past with Texas or even Oklahoma some years. But to do that, we're going to have to win on the road, which, like I said, has not been kind to us. We're going to have to beat, former Texas Tech quarterback Alan Bowman and keep him from going off, which is things that has happened this year. Our pass defense is horrendous. It would not shock me for him to have like a career day going out on senior night against a former team. He's what, 33 years old now?
Yeah, he's gotten his
I
job
joke a little bit.
now.
Yeah, he's old man. Because he was quarterbacking under Kingsbury, and that was 3 coaches ago for Texas Tech. And then to finish up the Texas Tech season, we come back and host West Virginia, and they've been back and forth all year. They may be figuring things out too, so it's like you can get to 8-4. But you're going to have to, win on the road. You're going to have to come back home to a probably pretty dead atmosphere Thanksgiving weekend at home, and take care of a team who is feisty. They've been really a thorn in the side for Texas Tech. Years that you think you should beat them or at least be competitive, they just come out and punk you. So, we still have a decent shot at a good result for the year ahead of us, but it's going to take some regrouping to get there.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you a little bit later, but you brought up Alan Bowman here. I want to ask you, when he transferred to Michigan, I don't know if it may be fresh in mind here, but just in case it's not, I believe he was benched beforehand, right, during that season with Kingsbury. And what do you think when the guy transfers to Michigan out of Texas Tech, leaves? I mean, he left in 2017. It seems like forever ago, or 2018. Um, it- and just I remember him lighting up Oklahoma State, but not winning and being very darn good. When he transferred to Oklahoma State, I just didn't think he would start, to be honest. I thought, maybe. I mean, but Ringel, he was a 3-star prospect. He's got other D1 offers. He'll probably be the starter. He hasn't looked great so far, but I was guessing like, hey, he'd probably be the starter or Bowman because he played really well against us when he played us beforehand. But did you remember that tenure a little bit here and gotta tell us when he left, where you're like, oh crap, we're missing out on a guy who's leaving, or hey, it's whatever.
So it's a little bit of both. As much as Kingsbury was seen as like a quarterback whisperer, he was not great at recruiting quarterbacks. So Bowman started off in 2018. Played in 3 games in 19, and then played 8 games in 20, which I believe was most of our schedule that year anyways. The problem with his tenure at Texas Tech was he was super inconsistent, and he was also dealing with some health issues. Obviously, when he played West Virginia, he had that deflated lung and fractured ribs. That was, I mean, he was not himself that game. It took him about a month to come back from that, to take back over. And then the guys around him, like, they were just different skill sets. It wasn't like, Donovan Smith was just the next great quarterback that would just take over for him. It was a completely different style. So when he left, we're like, okay, well, I mean, we'd kind of understood who he was. We weren't like in love with the game we saw from him. Like, when he left, we were like, okay, at least he's going to Michigan. Like, I have no expectation for him to start there. Like, he's going to go and get a degree and do all this, whatever. And then he transfers back into the conference at Oklahoma State. And I was like, I get chasing after like playing time. Like, you went to Michigan, you got that experience. You still thought you could play, and you're coming back to a system that you have some familiarity with, a school you have some familiar. At least you played against them. I'm sure they may have even recruited him out of high school. I don't remember. That was so long ago now. And we, as Texas Tech fans, we kind of sat back. We're like, Oklahoma State is not going to get the Alan Bowman experience, where like he's going to be back there. He's going to have good games. He's going to like make some like boneheaded decisions. Like, what are we doing? He's going to be a statue at times. He's going to run. Like there was just no knowing what you were going to get from Bowman. We kind of had that, like, as much as he was unknown, we had known that. So like, he left. We didn't think too much about it, besides just that we're just leaving a hole within the quarterback room, more so than like we were regretting losing him as a player. And I haven't like actively rooted against him, outside of when we go up against him. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things like, or sorry, we didn't play him last season. But just one of those things where it'll be interesting to see how he approaches this game and this opportunity to go and compete against a former team. I don't think he was, I don't know. I don't think he was, like, he felt like he was wronged by Wells and that staff. I think it was just the inconsistency, the injuries and stuff that he had to deal with while he was here. and stuff like that.
Yeah, I just really quickly brought up his recruiting information here. I mean, he gets offers from FCS and smaller schools. He visited Vanderbilt and visited Missouri, but both unofficially. And then has an offer from Illinois, and then basically Texas Tech, and then Ole Miss. And he ends up choosing Texas Tech pretty quickly after Ole Miss. I offers me within the same month, so 13 days later, the exact. But yeah, when he transferred to Michigan, I was like, oh, you know what? It's gonna be all right. Well, that's the guy who lit us up for a game, but didn't beat us, fortunately, and cool. And didn't think much of it. And then, I mean, he's really no passes at Michigan. I mean, his stats, like you said, he's getting extra, kind of years of school in there, getting a degree, and then going on from there. It's like, all right, well, he threw 11 passes total. His 2 years at Michigan, he completed 8 of them. So pretty darn good percentage there, but it's not saying much. And of course, comes to Stillwater here, and performance is how he has the past 2 seasons, just completely up and then completely down in retrospect. I'm curious here, though, on the Texas Tech part of it. Have you noticed like an Achilles heel at all? Is there a certain way Oklahoma State fans could go, hey, you know what? We're doing this really well. Maybe this is a good way we could beat Tech, or, we're able to at least throw it on them a little bit just because you guys do allow a little more passing yardage than running yardage overall? Or is there, just kind of, like you said, is it just kind of up and down? 1 week you're going to beat Iowa State, the next week you're going to, get blown out by Baylor or whatever.
Yeah. So some of our defensive struggles have been health related. We graduated, I think our top 3 defensive backs off the last year's team, including our top 2 corners and our just all world safety, who's lighting it up for the Cardinals this year. Replacing them was not easy. And then the guys that are stepping in have just not really been, they've just been guys. We've regressed significantly in tackling, and I think a lot of that has to do with just being outmanned. That it's, you're exposed a little bit and the skill gap, and then you're doing everything you can, but you're desperate at that point, and your tackling technique and fundamentals kind of break down. We've seen that. Our defensive line has suffered some season-ending injuries preseason, during the season. But again, the guys that we're missing, we didn't even think our defensive line was going to be a strength. We just had a lot of them. So we're missing guys, but we're not missing an all-star. We just didn't have an all-star. We've had a couple past few years with Tyree Wilson, and I'm blank on his name, the defensive end that took over for him after he went to the league. We just don't have that guy. We thought it may be a data ray, and he went down preseason with a season-ending injury. We thought it was going to be the Texas transfer and Dylan Spencer, and he goes down with a season-ending injury in fall camp. We had a freshman flash in the bowl game, Amir Washington. I think he had 3 sacks by himself. He's been a rotational piece at best. We have no pass rush. We're fairly decent against I say decent. We're not getting carved up like Texas Tech defenses of old have been carved up on the ground. A lot of that has to do with our like I said, our defensive line is good, not great. Our linebackers are pretty great. So Jacob Rodriguez and Ben Roberts, in terms of run stopping linebackers, that is, Ben Roberts is slower than Christmas. We cringe every time he turns his back to cover somebody because that's 6. It's terrible to say that about your, one of your key players and starters there. We've been trying to figure out rotation wise on the back end with just the injuries. Braylon Lux is our number 1 corner. He's missed several games. We've moved CJ Baskerville, our big returning safety. He's changed positions a couple of times in his tenure here at Texas Tech. So you have to kind of manage that. Chapman Lewis, the other safety, he's missed some games with injury. We've had young freshman corners have grown over the season, particularly Mo Horn, wears number 4. Like, I was terrified of what Colorado was going to do to him because teams have picked on him and he's not done well. But he held his own this past weekend. So like there are just deficiencies like at every level and at certain things. Like biggest is just going to be like being able to keep up with the pass. We give up so many passing yards. We're bad at tackling. We have a knack for giving up 8 yards on like 3rd and 7. Or committing some kind of boneheaded pre-snap penalty, and like we just gifted them a first down. It's not been a lot of like pass interference or like that kind of penalty, but we've had penalty issues. So if Oklahoma State's going to be successful, it's going to be through the year mostly, although we all thought Ollie Gordon was going to be a great running back, and he still is. Like he was so good last year. I don't know like what happened to him. I'm sure skill set and ability is still there somewhere, right? Like he's shown capable of that. So that gives me pause. You can't just write a player like that off. I know we're not facing all that mobile of a quarterback, so getting to Bowman may be a little bit easier for this Texas Tech team, but like we've tried to play coverage and that's burned us. We've tried to blitz everybody and that's burned us. There's times it's worked well, like when we got after Fafita and Tucson, like I didn't think we had a chance playing coverage. And I was like, we don't have a pass rush, but we can't just sit back and play coverage and have him pick us apart. And what we did was we sped him up enough that he and T-Mac couldn't just shred our defense. I don't know what the Oklahoma State offensive line looks like, but like I said, our pass rush is just horrendous. Our defensive backfield has just been holier than Swiss cheese. So it's like there are holes there to find when you look at the Texas Tech defense and ways that Oklahoma State can win this game. We're not all that mature and I'm blanking on this word, composed on the road. We're one of the most heavily penalized teams in the country, obviously in the conference. Most of it is pre-snap stuff, but like things you think you could coach out and scheme up and like, we're going to be fine. Like if we can just stop jumping off sides, we can stop false starting, but like we're 10 games in, it's still a problem. So yeah, that's again, like, if Oklahoma State's going to win this game, where they're going to find success, it's going to be, I think, through the air. For Texas Tech, like we're gonna have to find a pass rush. We're gonna have to, make Bowman beat us through the air. Gonna rely on the run defense to slow down and contain Gordon enough to try to make it a one-dimensional offense. Maybe Texas Tech can jump out to an early lead like we have been and kind of dictate that, but I mean, who knows, man?
Yeah, we've definitely got some injuries all around. Yeah, I mean, our offensive line, that's kind of why I think Ollie Gordon has been able to run as well as he did last year, but that's the only way I'm able to pull up anything that makes sense, because otherwise we're able to pass block pretty well. We just cannot run the football whatsoever. And coming into the season, I figured that was our biggest strength, was running the football. But we've had Alex Kowecki and Dalton Cooper out since November 7th. So I'm not talking forever. I'm talking a couple of days ago, since we're recording this November 11th. But they've missed games. Both of them have, off and on. Cooper's definitely missed quite a few games. and he was preseason All-American. Then they've got some guys defensively who Nick Martin and Colin Oliver, preseason All-Americans. Colin Oliver's been out since halftime of the Arkansas game, second game of the season, and Nick Martin's not been seen since basically the end of the Kansas State game, our fifth game of the season so far. And of course, we're going to play you guys to the 11th here, so it's been quite some time. But to say that, hey, it's just two guys here and two guys there is really just trying to scapegoat for injuries, when in all reality, it seems like we just fold up and call it a day pretty early on in games if things aren't going our way. So I'll be curious here. Senior day, we've got a ton to play for just for pride, but not a ton to play for bowl game deal or anything like that either. So yeah, I'm sure Bowman doesn't want to lose to his former team and team he transferred away from. But I'm also sure that he wants to have for darn good pride and win every other game that he's played in conference this year and hasn't happened. So it's kind of neither here nor there on who's going to show up. When this game takes place in Stillwater. I know right now the ESPN predictor is Oklahoma State 51% and Texas Tech 49%, but that doesn't mean anything to me at all. That's the only stat I can pull up that it makes me feel a little bit better about Oklahoma State fan going to the game on the 23rd here. So I want to end it out here and say, hey, Spencer, thanks so much for joining me here on the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. And if you're not already, please follow at 23 Personnel Podcast. Get all the Texas Tech stuff, news, notes, info, especially if you're a Tech fan, or if you want to learn more about Texas Tech and basketball scene as well. As we hope to be your guys' rival in basketball before too long. I'll say it that way. I think we both would rather be a rival of each other. Basketball, we've had our fair share of back and forth here, but man, as of late, it's not necessarily been our day when we play Tech. So we split some season series here and there, but it's not been frequent enough for me to say it's a rivalry of any type. And hopefully going forward in the Big 12, we can be kind of rivals in basketball at least, because we're trying to get on your guys' level and that consistency of going to the tournament, having deep runs, and of course, carry the national championship within this decade, right? So it's in the last 4 years, that sounds a lot better than this decade, though. So I'll say it that way. So, and then if you're not already, please follow at the CGA Tour on Twitter and Instagram, as well as subscribe here down below if you're not already to the podcast series. Trying to build this up for the Oklahoma State's affiliate of the College Tunnel Network here, joined by Spencer of 23 Personnel Podcast of the College Tunnel Network as well. And then lastly, if you're not already, follow at Big 12 Huddle on Twitter, or subscribe to Big 12 Huddle here. It's the weekly podcast about the Big 12 that I host with another co-host from the UCF podcast. And we've had guys like Spencer on here, and got other plans here coming up to have much more of the kind of basketball side of things as the Big 12 takes its full shape here this year conference. So Spencer, thanks so much for joining here again, and we'll catch you guys again soon.
Appreciate it.